playing with it for like 5 minutes now, trying to make sure it's green.
Maybe I'll pull up here a minute, get a little
Yay.
wider view. There we go.
Cool.
Oh, Chelsea, I'm so happy to be doing this with you. Thank
Me
you for
too.
joining us today.
Yay. Thanks for having me.
I'm just such a fan of your work. I can't remember when I first learned about it, maybe a couple years ago now, and all of your wonderful mix of like sketches and illustration, and like all of your work is just so whimsical and colorful. I feel like whenever I see it, it just brings a smile to my face.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
And yeah, today you brought some inspiration that I think just cheers us all up of those gorgeous sunflowers. They're so cute.
I'm addicted to flowers. They're just such a happy.
Yeah, I remember at my wedding, we had big bouquets of sunflowers was our choice out on
Yes,
the dock.
that's the best. That's
Always think of
perfect.
growing them in the garden.
Yeah, they remind me of
Yeah,
Italy every time I see them, so
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
biased towards them for more than one reason.
Well, I wonder if you might share just a little background about yourself for everybody and some maybe let us know what tools you've got there. And
Sure.
yeah.
I'm living in California right now, to Italy every summer, so I'm also in love with sunflowers for that reason. But I always, when I go back to Italy now, always have my little tiny palettes. This was the Samantha Dion Baker one that you guys put
Mm-hmm.
together, but then the little Demi one, I've got a bunch of other colors that I use often. When I'm traveling, I use the water brushes, but around the studio, I've got a bunch of different sizes. I use Winsor& and
Mm-hmm.
Newton brushes, regular Dick Blick. I've got Princeton. I'm kind of all over the board with different brands that I use, both with paints and with brushes. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing I've really kind of stuck to over the years is my paper. I'm addicted to the Canson watercolor paper. This is
Oh, okay.
the, yeah, it's just their 140-pound cold press, and I use it in everything. Um,
Oh, cool. Oh, I've tried their Montval Canson 140 pound. We've used that for some of the art toolkit cards and such. And I've been just
they,
hooked on
it's
arches
a
since
good,
I started.
yeah. Once you find a paper, it's hard to kind of switch to another brand. It's like, this is mine. It's my favorite.
Totally kind of get to know the feel of it and
Exactly.
completely get that. And then you
Yeah.
got like a pencil and some pens there.
Yes, just a regular, I've got the Blackwing pencil. This is my go-to regular pen for writing, but it also works for doing some lettering because you can just write normally and make all the strokes a little bit wider by filling it in. It's the Pilot G2, the
Mm-hmm.
.38 nib.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tombow, this
Got one of
one
these.
is, oh my gosh, they're the best. It's the dual brush pen. So the tip, this side is a nice wide tip for doing some brush lettering. But on the other side, you can also use for making some regular lettering. But in the sample photo, that's this guy right here was actually made with this end, just the
Oh,
regular point. You just write it out normally and then go over it a few times in areas where the downstroke would be wide if you were using a regular brush pen. So you can
oh.
use point to kind of imitate a brush lettering style without having to have a brush pen exactly.
Oh, it comes out so beautifully. I have to say, I am like super intimidated by lettering. You know, my basic big pen is just like grabbing a big Sharpie, which I have to label
Yes.
so no one runs off with my big Sharpies.
The only risk I have right now is my cat stealing my pens. We find every now and then we find a stash under the bed of our mostly these ones. She's biased towards stealing the Pilot pens right now,
Oh
which is
no,
a
troll.
bummer. Yes, she's a troublemaker. But yeah, you can make brush lettering, or at least the style of it, with a regular pen, or if with Tombow or whatever brand you have. There's no reason why you can't use a regular pen though,
Oh,
because
that's
it's
super
just a fun,
inspiring.
easy style. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love with your work, I feel like, and I share this as an artist too, that it's okay to have some different sort of styles or approaches depending
Oh,
on what you're
totally.
doing, like whether it's field sketching or more illustration. And that's something I'm drawn to in your work is you experiment with media and you have looser styles or kind of tighter and
Oh yeah, like
yeah.
I like doing, let's see, I like doing very tight stuff, but I'll show you the calendar that I did this year. So I'll do more like detailed. They're still a little loose, but not as loose as like these sunflowers right here. So I do like doing more tight illustrations. Um, but I also like getting very loose. When I was practicing the samples for this demo, I was filling a giant page of sunflowers, and it's nice to, I was using it as a warm-up for another project that I'm working on, but it's fun to loosen up and kind of just play and let the colors flow
Yeah.
together.
I feel like you do that in your field sketches too. And I know
Oh,
for me
definitely.
that the field is a place to like practice and get ideas and bring that back to my studio, some of that benefit.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I've
Um,
got my sketchbook right here. I can flip through real quick.
oh yeah. I remember you had a
Oops.
recent one from like your road trip and
Yes, this is Goldie. I name
oh,
all my
that was so fun to
sketchbooks.
follow.
Yeah, so for this one, like I like doing really loose landscapes. This was when we were down in Florida when we could still travel. But I
Mm-hmm.
also like doing loose ones with the intent of drawing on top with pen because it's a
Mm-hmm.
nice way to like get a little bit control. But if you only have like this one I made during when we were eating lunch, so it was quickly trying to get the color down, and then after like we finished eating, I went back in with the pen to add the details on top that
Oh, that's
I
so
didn't have
interesting.
time
Yeah,
to
I
add
often
in
do
after.
pen first. I like that approach of you can do some looser color and then go back with pen. Oh, gorgeous colors there on your sunset. And
It's been fun. Yeah, I've gotten more loose in the last few years with my watercolors, especially when traveling. Just I like to like get up and move and go on to the next thing. But most of
yeah.
the time when I do pen now, it's after the fact.
Uh-huh.
I do bring with me like the waterproof pens. I use a Faber-Castell for that. But
Mm-hmm.
I used to have microns too to do the pen first and then color after. But now I really like doing the pen after because I'll use a fountain pen for that.
Yeah, Lamy Safari. That's a classic
They're
sketching
so
pen now, I feel.
good. Yeah, those ones and the Kawikos are my favorites for fountain pens
Oh.
on the go.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
because
don't
I've
know the
got,
Kawiko. I'll have to try that out.
I'll show you. Hold on.
Yeah.
I've got all my goodies are right here.
Oh, yeah, and I just see a question too. If you could share what brand of
Yeah,
book
what's up?
Goldie is.
Oh, Goldie's actually one that I made.
Oh, it's just a
I name all the sketchbooks anyways, just keep track of them because I took bookbinding in college, and then when I started going back to Italy after I graduated, I got sick of carrying around three different sketchbooks, one for journaling, one for watercolors, and then one for drawing. So when I went back, I think my third trip over there, I made my own sketchbook by binding all the papers inside that I wanted to
mm-hmm.
use. So this is just like regular paper, and then this is drawing paper on this side, and then watercolor papers here. And it's easier for me just to have everything in one place.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then like I can
That's
still collage in there.
That is such a great project. I did bookbinding as well in college, and the satisfaction of making a book is, the
It's
functional
amazing.
art. Did you make your pouch too? That's beautiful.
No, this is my friend Amo made this. Her company is called Omeed. It's Ohmeed. And she makes these little leather pouches, but I also have, she's got brass scissors and pens and everything. Amo's amazing. But it's the perfect size to actually put the palettes in, and then I can carry a little mini water brush and a Kawiko pen.
Oh, those
Kawiko's
are the Kawikos.
yes, I love them. So they have mechanical pencils, they've got fountain pens, and it's just the perfect little travel size, and everything just
Oh
fits in
dear.
this pouch so perfectly.
I'm
It's
off to go
amazing.
shopping now, Chelsea.
Fountain pen
I'm a sucker for
goodies.
small art supplies.
I
That's
am too. I
beautiful.
even have, I sit in here. Yeah, I have a mini eraser even in here.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
All the minis go in like my
Yeah.
little pouch from Hummel.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, too many things. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you want to dive in a little bit? We talked today about I prepped some cards to follow along and practice, and
Yay.
I just thought I'd show everybody too. I'm going to be experimenting. With a couple of brushes Rosemary sent me that are some prototypes that I'm going
Oh,
to play
fun.
with. So we'll see. I just have began trying these. This is a triangle brush, and then there's this little travel kind of pointed filbert. So anyways, I
Yeah.
thought they'd be fun for a little pointed thing. Oh, perfect. Oh, me.
There we go. Somebody asked. Yes, it's Omeed. It's by a sweet gal named Hummel. Yeah. The
Um,
spelling's a little different. But yeah,
yeah. And you've got a cute
cool.
little clipboard there too.
Yes, mini
They're all got
everything.
everything small and cute. And then it's easy to take on the go.
Exactly. I like being able to kind of like, I feel like Mary Poppins when I'm traveling. So it's like I have a little bit of everything in my bag, but the mini really helps to make sure I can have everything in my bag.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
And then
cool.
I don't have such beautiful sunflowers in front of me, but I did print out, which hopefully everyone or after the fact, I'll have this up for the week on my Instagram if you want to download some photos, and then had some others in our post about this demo of your great sunflower photos. So I'm going to be using these for my
Yay.
tagging along.
How fun. Cool. No, so when I am doing a sunflower, to be honest, a lot of the time I just go in straight and start painting because it's such a shape and it's very forgiving when you're doing your own watercolor. But for people, I know a lot of people don't like to jump right into the watercolors. So when I'm starting one a little more broken down, I always start with a pencil and just kind of plan out what's going to go on my page. How big is the sunflower going to be? Am I going to do a lot of mini ones? Where do I want the lettering to be? For this one, I kind of want to just have like a little greeting at the top. I'm going to have it say hello, and then we'll do the sunflower down here in the center.
So we're thinking like a great big one. Do you often, when you do
I
like
like doing big ones.
when you do your illustrations, do you often do like thumbnail sketches first, or just kind of dive in and start seeing like where your composition goes? What's some of your process?
It depends. Like if I'm out in the field and I really don't have a lot of time, I'll usually just dive right into it. But for like I'm working on some custom books right now, and I definitely did some little storyboard stuff, mini thumbnails to just kind of plan out everything. Because with those ones, I have to place a lot more text versus this one. If the sunflower ends up being up a little bit bigger, I can just shift the lettering pretty easily.
Yeah.
But I don't typically do thumbnails ahead of time. I'm a little too impatient for that.
Oh, I understand that. Patience is one of the trickiest.
Yes,
All
but
right.
even like for these little guys, it's okay if the sunflowers go off the edges too.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
not like the end of the world. Like this guy, I just went overboard and filled all the way over to the edges. So there's nothing wrong with having it go off the page, or if you feel like it's cramped, it's your piece and it should be fun and kind of reflect what you want to make.
Yeah, yeah.
So this little guy, looking at the sunflower here, I'm just going to very lightly and roughly sketch in a circle for the center of it. And then I'm not going to sketch in every little petal. That's just going to drive me crazy. But I can kind of give myself a guide of how far I want them to branch out towards the edge of the page. This one I'm definitely going to have go off the edges, just so it's also bigger and easier to show up on the video.
Yeah, yeah.
And then plan for a couple little green leaves popping out.
I'm here at one of these for some of my inspiration.
This guy's a little bit different. I've got the ones, I'm looking at this little one right here that's facing straight at me versus these ones. Yeah, so if you guys want to look at these ones on the camera to kind of paint them more from an angle like these guys, that's fine too.
Got it,
and
got it.
It's just for something like that.
All right, cool.
If you're going to do something like that, same thing with the pencil, just kind of plan out where the center of it's going to be. And your pencil marks can always overlap each other. And just plan out roughly where the petals are going to be.
Got it.
And if you like just jumping into painting too, that's totally fine. But if you want to make sure you have space for some lettering later, it doesn't hurt to plan.
I feel like that could be a motto there. It doesn't hurt to plan. And part of the
it doesn't hurt, but
just having the plan. You don't have to follow it through.
Oh, totally no. No, like I will probably ignore most of these pencil lines by the end of this thing. Yeah. And the fun thing, since we're already working with a white piece of paper, watercolors, like you have to build from the lightest colors to your darkest colors. So I'm going to jump in first with a Naples yellow. It's one that I added into the little demi palette here. Just get my brush. I'm using a size 6 watercolor brush right now.
Nice. Oh, I had a little Naples yellow floating around, but I'll just have to pull in something else for now.
If you don't have a Naples yellow too, just get a really diluted yellow that you have. It could be a lemon yellow. It could be more of like a cadmium. Just dilute it down, because what I like to do with these is I'll do them, it's easier to see in some of these larger ones, where I'll go in with the first layer of Naples, let it dry, and then go back in on top with a darker yellow.
Creating like, some of that depth.
Yeah, so it's got some of the depth, it's got the texture of the petals without having, and it's still very loose with those top layers, so I'm not going in and painting lines on every single little sunflower. Like you definitely can, but I think it's honestly more enjoyable just kind of being loose with it and not
and
being overcritical.
Some of the color shifts in value. Oh no, it's so cute.
You'll drive yourself less crazy too.
Yeah.
Not trying to paint everyone. So with my Naples yellow, go in and just do Very light strokes. I like to leave some space in between them too, even on the petals themselves. But just pushing down, getting a wide stroke, kind of like when you're doing brush lettering even. Start very thin, apply more pressure, and then lighten up as you get to the edge. If it's easier to turn the page as you go around, that's fine.
And that's like something terrific just to practice when you're getting to know a brush. I feel like it's just to like practice pushing it down, picking it up, or moving it from side to side, like
Totally,
getting the
because
feel of a brush. And you might, yeah, whether a square brush or a pointed brush, that's always a
yeah,
good exercise.
like even the different sizes of the brush too. Just this one, I switched up to a size 10 now,
Mm-hmm.
and just like one stroke gives me a near perfect petal size. It's nice too because sunflower petals, even though each one's pretty different from one another, they're all relatively the same elongated almond shape. Here, I'll pluck one off just to come here, come here. They're all essentially just like a long almond or football shape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice tip to turn your page. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, thanks for the heads up about my audio. Hopefully I'll try and speak a little closer to my phone, and hopefully that sounds a little better.
Okay. Back to the little guy.
I lost a little track of my circle here.
It's okay.
That's all right.
Alrighty. So I got my first layer done. And because like if I start doing the dark right here, if I end up touching any of the wet petals, it's going to bleed into it. Not that that's entirely a problem. It'll end up kind of looking something like that. I don't mind it, but it can get, some people don't like how icky it looks bleeding together. So I'm going to give that light yellow a chance to dry first and then move on and work on some of my leaves around the edge of it. I'm going to use, I've got, this is an oxide of chromium that I really like.
Oh, which brand of oxide of chromium do you like?
It's Winsor and Newton, actually. They're typically my go-to. I got addicted to them a while ago and just haven't really branched out.
Yeah.
But same thing kind of for the leaves too. Just getting wider at the wider in the middle and thinning them out as I get closer to the edge.
And you're
I'm
just
gonna
leaving a
start.
nice little bit of white space around, so there's a little bit of sparkle.
Yeah, it's fun to just kind of let the piece breathe, but also I don't want to get this green too close to the yellow where it will risk bleeding into it. I personally just like the look of kind of how it glows with the halo of the white around it, but it doesn't hurt to give it some room to dry too. It's not that warm here in Berkeley today either, so my paper's not going to dry as quickly as it normally would. I'm going to treat these leaves the same way as I do the sunflower too. So I'm going to do this green and then I'll go back in with like another darker shade later if there's time and then do some more detail on top of them.
So do you have a favorite subject matter to paint?
It depends. For most of my greeting cards, I like plants and I'm biased towards cats too. So a lot of my illustrations, that's for sketching notions, are going to be plant-based with cats, hopefully. But when I'm actually out sketching and painting, like when I'm traveling, I like painting buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So very different. I get to play more when I'm out and about.
Do you have a lot of plants in your house?
Way too many. I don't think my boyfriend realizes how many plants we have hiding in our apartment. And it's just where I'm standing, like my little studio table's actually in our kitchen because our apartment's very small. I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there's like 13 plants just within the kitchen / studio nook.
So something I'm noticing that I am not as used to is like part of this is like making kind of consistent marks with my brush as I go around. and it feels very different, like the kind of painter I am. This is sort of a different experience.
Going this
And
like loose.
or I feel like it's a little more, well, it's like the illustrative, like kind of the calligraphic of using the
Yeah,
brush and making
that's
these
a good
kind of
way to describe it.
consistent marks. And I wonder if you have any tips or ideas about how you've sort of developed, I mean, practice, of course, but in finding your handle with your brushes and to like you're developing your feel
I'd say
of.
it's definitely practice, but I also don't hold myself to like feeling like they all need to be uniform. Definitely just practicing though, because I do like all the lettering for the cards and stuff. I think that's probably what's built up my hand the most because like this brush, the size that I use most often, the 6, this tip of it's pretty similar to the Tombow brush pen. So between like practicing my lettering all the time for the greeting cards, I think that's also influenced how I use the brush because the regular stroke for this guy, it's pretty similar in width to when I'm doing the strokes with the watercolor brush. So I think even though they're different mediums, practicing with this one has influenced how I use the paintbrush and also the other way around. So if that makes sense, but I think that's probably what's influenced how they seem to come across more uniform.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, it's really fun. It's just I wonder if others are experiencing that too. And
Each medium kind of helps you train for
I'm getting
another one
more
too.
respect too for your
No, it's fun too because I also do like chalk signs and stuff. That's probably where I started adding more lettering into my cards, is because I had a background in using chalk for doing like sidewalk murals and doing menu boards for wine tasting rooms and stuff. So like that developed my hand, and practicing in chalk is so forgiving, especially
Mhm.
compared to ink. Like when you're practicing brush lettering, it's good to do it on tracing paper, but you're potentially going to go through a lot of tracing paper. Whereas if you have a regular chalkboard or just like practicing on the sidewalk, you just wash the chalk away when you're done. So it's a good way to build your hand while not using up a lot of materials at the same time.
Oh, that's such a great idea.
Yeah, chalk is a really great way to practice your lettering and just kind of getting comfortable with those movements. It's going to be like a bigger movement than you normally would. Like my lettering for chalk is typically like this wide or this
Hmm.
tall. And it's like, yeah, I'm going to have to shrink it down later for it to be functional on a greeting card, but like building up your hand for that and getting the strokes, used to the strokes, but also experimenting with different strokes in chalk is a great way to practice when you want to go back into brush lettering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see, I think I'll pick this guy up. Yeah, this guy's mostly dry. There's a couple little leaves that are hanging in there, or not leaves, petals that are hanging in there and wet, but it's okay if a couple of them bleed. So I'm going to go in with my next color now. I'm going to pick this darker yellow. I think this is the Samantha box. Is this one the cadmium
I think that's
yellow?
a cadmium yellow hue. So that's a really nice
Okay.
opaque yellow too. Those
It's a like
cadmium hues,
perfect
no, they're not the
sunflower
original.
yellow.
Yeah. Nice lemon or yeah, warm orangey.
Yeah. So for this one, I'm going to keep the strokes more concentrated to the bottom because it's shadows from the sunflower darker towards the bottom and it gets lighter out towards the tips. So not going over the entire petal, but just a few strokes starting from the center and going out towards the edges of the petals.
You've spent some time looking at sunflowers, Chelsea.
Too many. Probably too many, but I like them.
So did you go to art school or design school? Are you self-taught?
I went to the University of Texas at Austin for just the regular art program out there. So I have a BFA in studio art, but my focus was when I was in college, printmaking and bookmaking. And I didn't actually get into watercolors until I studied abroad in between my third and fourth year in school.
Was that
So
Italy?
yes, hence the addiction. But I went there, all my classmates brought their oil paints and their tempera paints with the intent of sitting inside, kind of working at an easel the whole time. And I brought a sketchbook and one of the little travel Winsor and Newton sets.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to go out and explore. So everyone else is stuck inside, and I got to just go play outside and sketch the streets. And that's where I finally kind of gave myself the chance to learn how to watercolor, but I also had the scenery that I really wanted to spend the time learning how to document with watercolor.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
And
that sounds so wonderful.
So now watercolor is pretty much the only medium that I use.
So you stayed hooked on watercolor in Italy.
Yeah, no, it's a total addiction between the two of them. Like I have a few mediums around the studio, but when I'm not doing chalk for another gig, it's only going to be watercolor here at home. Yeah, let's see. So now that when I move on to this next bit in the center, actually, we'll do the leaves. Do some dark on the leaves real quick. So for this one, I'm actually going to end up having to mix a darker green.
I'll often just add in some blues to darken my green. Do you have any favorite greens you mix? Or, I mean, it's super great to have pre-mixed greens too, because they can be great shortcuts for just like.
Honestly, like I've got Hooker's green, sap green, and the oxide of chromium. Those three are my go-tos. But then I really like just throwing in some brown into it, especially for a sunflower, because everything's very warm hued, even the shadows with the sunflower. So a brown really helps to darken it up, but keep it very warm at the same time. So same thing for these guys. Just little strokes concentrated towards the base, because the shadows of the petals would be casting more of a shadow on the leaves there.
I love how you leave little white areas. I feel like the bits of white really help add sparkle. And that's something I think too in like field sketches, just having that white can add.
It gives it some room to breathe. Yeah, it gives it room to breathe, and it's also just, I think, kind of saving your sanity a little bit too, and giving you permission not to fill every space on the page. Okay, those go. This is actually the first time I've cleaned these sets in a really long time. So this is, I think, the cleanest they've been since I got them in the mail.
So honored. They came out beautifully.
Oh, no, my watercolors are disgusting. I'll show you my bigger palette when I'm working on illustrations for the books. They're constantly filthy. I never wash them.
No, that's just being efficient. You just save your mixes. I mean, most of the time.
Exactly.
Like that too. Yeah.
I'm going to use the same color combinations over and over, so why would I bother rinsing them? Yeah. All right, so for the center of the sunflower, instead of waiting for it to dry, I'm actually going to do the two colors pretty close to each other. So I'm going to start with this warmer, lighter brown from the Samantha kit.
Yeah, I think that's transparent red oxide, maybe, if I remember.
I think so, yeah. It's looking like that. And then start there. Kind of rinse out my brush with the water and just the water in the brush. Drag it out to the edges, closer to the petals. And same thing how with the leaves, we're leaving a little halo around them. Same thing going up to the bases of the petals in the center. It's okay if a couple of the petals end up bleeding into the center.
And it's starting to look more like a sunflower.
Yes. And then just water in the center.
So you're doing that. I love that technique of kind of fading out. Once you've got some watercolor, some paint on the paper, you can like take a cleaner brush or just a little bit of water and kind of pull things in.
I'll clean this guy out. Kind of erase a little bit from the center. Yeah, and then while it's still wet, I'm going to go in. Let's see. Get this dark sepia.
And you're just using that to kind of create a little extra shadow around the outer.
Yeah, just around the outer bit of it. Each sunflower is a little bit different too. Like these ones I have on the edge, they have a yellow center with green in the middle of it actually, but I think the typical sunflower that I like painting has the darker center to it.
So do you have any like little like mantras you remind yourself of, or little tips you like to think about for when you're painting? Like I don't know, I've got a couple like trust in process.
That's a good one. I think like especially when I'm teaching a class, regardless of the age, I used to work for a nonprofit where most of my kids were between like second grade and sixth grade. And like the older they got, the more critical they became on themselves and when they were making. So just even when I'm teaching adults now, one of my rules at the beginning of class is just to be kind to yourself. So
That's
like,
beautiful.
yeah, like watercolors, especially when you're learning them, they can be really frustrating and not feel very forgiving. So you just need to go slowly, be forgiving with yourself and forgiving with the process, and then just you'll develop the style that you want to use with it. Like the my watercolors that I used to work on years ago are super tight, and I was really trying to control it because I was very much into printmaking at the time. So like in Talio, everything was like controlling every single line, and I treated my watercolors the same way. But now like they're much more loose and I'm forgiving of them, and it's okay if they end up bleeding into each other because it's watercolors and they're supposed to be flowing and fun. So just reminding yourself to be forgiving with the medium but also with yourself was really helpful.
Could use that in like all departments of life.
Pretty much, yes. Yeah. All
I
right,
want
so
to just tell everyone, speaking of like kids, younger people, I downloaded from your website the coloring pages you have, and my daughter
yeah,
immediately like colored all 5 of them. I think you have 5, and then made them into a little book and told me stories about cats all day.
that's adorable. Oh my God.
So thank you, and everyone should download your beautiful coloring sheets.
Yay. Now, if you want to, if you guys want to find those, if you go to sketchynotions.com and just scroll to the very bottom of the page, there's a whole page just of freebies. I think there's a free calendar on there right now. There's 2 sets of coloring pages. There's the cats ones with plants because I'm obsessed. And then there's another set where it's thank you pages for essential workers. So, but all those are on the website and they're free for you guys to play with and color.
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yay. All right, I'm going to let this guy dry real quick because I know if I go in with the brush pen right now, I'm going to end up smearing it with my hand. So we can practice some lettering on a second page while this dries. Okay.
Lettering, like I said, so far out of my comfort zone.
It'll be fun. And the nice thing too is like you can always start with a pencil. You don't have to go
Okay.
in.
I'm gonna follow your lead here.
Yes. Yeah, let that guy dry because you don't want to risk smearing the paint with your hand while it's drying. That's so frustrating. I think when that happens more so than the colors bleeding into each other is when you smear it with your hand.
Because you're like almost done, and then
Yes, and then it's like I screwed it up because I was
yeah.
impatient. So I'm gonna force myself not to touch it. So what I was gonna write on this little guy was just hello at the top. So I'm gonna write it out in pencil real quick.
Mm-hmm. And you've got yourself kind of a little. You're just being fun, like it's a little bit on a. Oh, okay, that's kind of up and down.
Yeah, I like my lines typically bounce, and I like mixing between like traditional calligraphy styles, but also block lettering. There's a lot of capital letters and uppercase ones. I really don't like how they look when they're cursive, so I'll skip them and just do them block lettering because I think it's fun. But that doesn't have to be in the same line. Like if I was going to do all cursive, it can bounce the line of where all the letters land on for like the baseline. It doesn't have to be the same. They can
Do you have any
play.
advice for like a nice book or something for people getting into lettering, like looking at like some shape
Yes.
inspiration? So I feel like that must be a huge part of it, like building your vocabulary for how letters can look. I know when I see letters that look nice, but I don't think I could like pull out of my head, at this point in my world.
I would recommend my friend Shelly Kim. She has a couple books on lettering, but her Instagram and she's got a YouTube channel just of really great, encouraging tips. Like she is one of the sweetest, most warm people I've ever met. Just even like texting her, it feels like a hug. She's just that warm and encouraging. Her Instagram's Letters by Shell. She's got a lot of great videos for like practicing lettering. She's got pamphlets that you can buy and kits that she'll put out every now and then of like the brushes that she uses and printables and her alphabet just of her style and different styles that you can also do while doing brush lettering. But Shelly is a really wonderful person to learn from.
Oh, cool. Thank you. We'll have to look her up.
Yeah, definitely give her a look and she's a lovely human to follow. So let's see. So I'm going to play with this guy first, the regular brush pen. And the brush pens are really fun from Tombow because you can do kind of like we were doing with the watercolor brush earlier, start really light, add a lot of pressure, and get really thin, really light, a lot of pressure, and then thin again, just like the little watercolor brushes with the petals.
And
so
my
when you're
experience
doing
with these too, I've loved these just with sketching with them, and the fact that
Yes.
they're water soluble means you can like take your
Oh,
travel
totally.
brush and
Mhm.
just like swoosh out this great value range. So I've never done lettering with them, but I love doing like value sketches with them. So that's my
That's why, like the fountain pens that I carry too, they're water soluble, so you can also make the ink and wash. But if you don't have a fountain pen, Pilot's also good for that.
okay, great
So
tip.
these guys, they don't bleed as well as like fountain pen ink, but it's enough where you can play with it to kind of get the feel of an ink and wash painting, but still have the control of like drawing on top of it afterwards or beforehand.
So run around your office and pick up your open your pen drawer and
Yeah.
experiment with how water soluble things are.
Oh, totally. Like if you don't want
Yeah.
to dive in yet to getting like a full fountain pen, they're not. You can find some really affordable brands too. Kaweco's affordable. Lamy, I think, is affordable. But if you want to just play first to see if you even like it, Pilot and then just add water.
Oh, great suggestion. Thanks,
Yeah,
Chelsea.
or the Tombow, especially since they have the fine point at the other end too.
Yeah.
So when you're doing brush lettering, though, make sure you have it kind of angled. I'm right-handed, so my hand's going to go across the page this way, but the bottom left corner of the paper is pointing towards my belly button. So it's a good way to hold the paper so it's more conducive to your hand flowing across the page. And I'm just going to quickly go over.
And you're starting with the brush end?
Yeah, I'm not going to do, I'll save the like more cursive style one to do with the regular point just to show you that it is possible to make that style without having a brush pen. But I also just like the mixture of cursive letters.
How tightly do you hold your pen?
Like a regular pen, honestly. It's more just like the pressure of pushing down. I'm not holding it like so loose it's going to fall out of my hand, but it's just when I know I need to have a really thick downstroke, that's when I push down more firmly. But I'm not holding it between my fingers any tighter. It's just the amount of pressure you're applying with it. So similar to like a watercolor brush. Let's see. We'll switch to this one. So it's the regular point now, practicing for making a cursive looking word without a brush pen. And you could use just a regular Crayola marker if you have those at home with your kids' stuff.
So you're just starting by just tracing everything, it looks like.
Yeah, just tracing it. But then also now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go over it a couple times. But where I'm really going to focus on going over it are where the downstrokes are. And you can plan how thick you want stuff to be too. And just kind of fill it in.
Oh, yours looks so much nicer than mine.
Be nice. You gotta
You've
be
had
nice.
some practice. Oh, right. I'm supposed to be practicing being gentle on myself. But I'm
Yes.
so uncomfortable. Okay, I got this. I'm just going to go around.
It just takes practice. And like everybody develops their own style. Like I love learning from Shelley, but our styles are totally different with lettering, and that's totally fine.
And are you coloring them in as you go?
Not yet. I'm gonna plan and just kind of edit them first for how wide I want things to be. Like when you're doing with a regular brush pen, your upstroke's going to be typically more thin, and then the downstroke is where it's going to be thicker. So I'm planning where the downstrokes are to be much wider than the upstrokes.
Got it.
I like my upstrokes a little bit thick too, like on this O right here. It's like thick, thin, thick, thin, and then looping around a little bit. It has the thick and then ends, I don't know, like medium thick flourish. So just playing out first, I'm going to look through, see if there's any other places where I want to adjust and make them thicker.
It's so fun to see your process of this because your final product looks so like lively and spontaneous, but you put some planning and you're working over the letters. You're not just you don't necessarily need to just have it done and all one swoop through.
Nah, like that's when you get more comfortable with a brush pen, you can definitely do that. But even for like when I'm working on a greeting card, I will plan it in pencil first and go through multiple iterations of making sure I get the right stroke right. Even when I'm using just the brush pen. That may move faster, but I'll go through a lot of different versions trying to get it just the right way I want it on the final card.
With your cards you produce, are you Do you ever do some editing where you might take the text from one and add it to art on another, or do you really try and do your final all on one piece before scanning it in? And I know you've
I
got a whole line of
used
stationery.
to. I
Hmm.
used to always try and do them on the same file, but then like I had a couple instances where somebody requested a a custom of that one, which would mean I would have to repaint the entire thing because like the grading was input into the watercolor. And then I used to do 5x7 greeting cards, and now they're all the 4.25 by 5.5, the A2 size. And there were a lot of designs I had to completely redo because I couldn't scale them down with the
Mm.
lettering in them. So it's easier for me to edit um, the watercolor separately from the lettering file.
How did you get into doing chalk drawing? I'm thinking of your lettering here and the practice you must have had. Um,
I did, I really didn't do watercolors in high school. I hated it, but playing with acrylics and chalk were my medium, and we always had a chalk festival every spring when I was in high school. And then I grew up down by Santa Barbara, and the Santa Barbara Mission has a giant chalk festival that was supposed to be over Memorial Day weekend. And it's a fundraiser, and we do giant 8 foot by 8 foot chalk pieces on the sidewalk in front of the mission as a fundraiser. So it was my way to just play all the time. And then I'd say it was probably like 6 years ago, a friend's son was getting married, and she asked me to do all the chalk signs for her wedding. And it's like, okay, I'll do it. And put them on a website, and then just kept pushing. And now I just do chalk gigs on the side. It's really fun.
oh, that's great.
Yeah. So even with the brush pen or just like a regular pen too, you can use the Pilot pen to get some wider lettering to make it look like you made it with a brush pen. So
Oh, that's beautiful. And yours are so lively. I just love how expressive your letters are, especially on like the cursive. And
thank you.
all right, all right. You're inspiring me here.
Okay. Okay. Play with lettering. It's fun.
Yeah, I did get a book once on like practicing handwriting. As you know, I like, I'm kind of an all caps writer where I like my little all caps script, and I've got some cursive that, it looks sort of artistic, but it's a bit of a scrawl. I would never,
Yeah.
people, it can be cryptic.
There's nothing wrong with the scrawl. It's okay.
But it's nice to develop, I think, some of the penmanship, and I believe in, the value of things like cursive and made
Hmm.
by hand. And anyways,
Well,
thanks
especially
for the,
since so many schools aren't even teaching cursive
that's what I
anymore. It's like,
hear.
I want it. Like,
Yeah,
save cursive. It's
I'll
wonderful.
put my daughter to work.
Yeah. So now I'm going to go back in, and even like the pencil lines I did earlier where I wanted the lettering are totally changed. So I'm going to adjust where I want my hello to go to play with where the gaps are of the leaves. And I even have a little watercolor droplet that flew there. I'm going to cover it up with a pen mark. Okay. A couple of these are a little wet, so don't do as I say and wait till it's fully dry. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to go in and letter it.
All right.
Yeah, definitely wait till it's fully dry later, or just be very careful. Like with the brush pen, it's long enough that I could reach over without really risking getting my hand across it. But if you're not comfortable with reaching across like that, definitely wait for it to dry or work on another watercolor in the meantime. So that's the other fun thing about watercolors. It's not fun waiting for paint to dry, but that doesn't mean you can't work on other ones in the meantime.
I feel you. I'm not a huge fan of hair dryers. I keep a little one around, but
I don't like them. I can't, I feel like it just pushes the watercolor around too much, and I'd rather just paint something else and wait for it to dry. Let's see, I'm gonna make these a little thicker too.
do you always work on little clipboards, or do you have some other surfaces you like to use?
A lot of the time, I'll just work straight on my table, but it is nice being able to not worry about the piece shifting around too much on the page, or on the table, I should say. Okay. Yeah, and so even though I have pencil lines all over it, and now that it's inked in, I would actually wait to go in and erase any of the pencil lines probably until tomorrow, even, because if I've found sometimes depending upon how liberal I've been with the watercolors, that even if though I think it's dry, it'll still like pick up with the eraser and smear the pigment across the page because I put a lot of color on there. So I would for this one, I'm going to wait till tomorrow to even go in and erase the pencil marks on the lettering and on the watercolor.
Oh,
But
that's a great tip. So really, oh no, and speaking of smudging,
no,
I got a little smudge.
make it thicker. Go in and make it thicker.
We'll
Yeah.
see.
No, you could totally adjust it. It's like, what was it, Bob Ross, like happy little accidents, just turn it into a cloud.
I know. There's a book that I read to my daughter called The Beautiful Oops.
Yay.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So are you going to go back and do any final things on your sunflower, or declare it done?
I might leave it actually. I really like how it's dried in the center because it's since I added more water to the center, it bled into the darker brown around the outside of it, and I really like how it's just left a natural center. But I could definitely go in and add more little polka dots on there. I could make another shade darker of yellow to add more texture to the petals. I think I'm going to leave it actually. I really like this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to add in a little bit more texture there.
Yeah.
Well, Chelsea, what do you have coming up right now? What should we know about with what you're up to?
Well, all my markets are canceled.
In a strange time.
Everything is canceled. But it's okay. I'm working on just new products. I put a couple new coloring postcards up in the Sketchy Notions shop yesterday. Those are, this is a little guy. I brought it out to show you the back of a postcard, but just coloring postcards are really fun. Yeah, I sell them in their 5x7s and their bigger packs. Everybody that orders gets a little tiny one. But I just wanted to show you the back of a postcard too for anybody that hasn't sent a postcard in a while, because these are, when you do them as 4x6s, this is the perfect size to send as a postcard in the mail and pay for cheaper postage. So these ones
really make someone happy, giving them
exactly a little piece of art, but something, a little snail mail cheer. Before I would send this, I would just clear coat it with I have like a matte clear coat spray, but even hairspray works to help give it a little more weatherproof and going through the mail.
Oh, that's a great suggestion.
Hairspray is wonderful. It's not going to be like as archival for preserving it over time, but it definitely helps to just keep anything from smearing while it's traveling. And then on the back of it, you can just write out, make sure you leave space for the little barcode at the bottom when you're shipping it and space for the stamp, but address it, write your letter, and go.
Well, that'll make someone's day to get in the mail.
Yeah, it's my whole thing.
Yeah.
So I've got the new things coming to the shop. I'm releasing new dates for art retreats next summer. Those are coming out next Friday on June 5th. So the rest of my day will be spent making giant sunflower pages because people that register early get a giant piece this year.
Oh, so fun. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, gosh, Chelsea, thank you so much for sharing your approach to making these postcards. I think now that I added in a few more darks and a little more details, I'm enjoying this. I wish I'd done a little tighter crop, maybe like you, but I'll have to practice with some of these other sunflowers. Thank you for pushing my comfort zone today.
Yeah, like if you wanted to do tighter stuff, you can definitely go in with an even smaller brush and darker colors to go in and just define all the little leaves, the leaves and petals if you want to, if you want to get tighter. But then you could also just fill a giant page with looser ones too, around a smaller quote.
Oh, it's beautiful. It comes together so nicely.
Yeah, for you guys asking about Omid, I think it is omid.com, and her Instagram, I'm pretty sure, is Omid Official or Omid Shop. If you scroll through my Instagram, you'll see some of her pouches, and then I have her tagged in there.
Yeah, and for sure follow, at Sketchy Notions, which I think is a really great name too.
I love it. It served me very well.
Chelsea, I hope someday we get to meet in person, but it's been such a treat to paint with you. And maybe someday I'll get to come meet you in Italy, or at least in California, if not the Washington area. And
please.
Yeah, and everybody, thanks so much for painting with us.
Oh, today. She is. Yeah, she's on a break for Ramadan. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. Oh.
Yes. She's got another Instagram called Sister Pink that you can find her at.
We'll have to give her a little shout out in the description.
Her and Shelly. These two are very wonderful ladies that you should look into and support.
Wonderful. Look forward to connecting with them. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and Chelsea.